And I don't recall reading in my scriptures anywhere where God tells us how old the earth is, or the heavens, the universe. It just says that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the deep. And then God's Spirit moved upon the face of the waters. Now, it doesn't tell us how long from the time He created the heavens and then the earth, how long it took Him before He decided to do something with the earth. I mean, the earth could have been sitting here for 3 billion years for all we know. We don't know in terms of that. I don't necessarily adhere to the idea of a 6,000 years old earth. We assume that man's been here for more than 5,000 years, but actually the furthest we can go back in our history in terms of civilization is right about 5,000 years. Before that time, we don't really know. In terms of human civilization. But you talk about these evidences. You say we're not open to evidence. It's wrong. You show us some legitimate evidence, some legitimate proven, beyond any shadow of a doubt, proven facts from your position, and I'm all for listening to it. And no, I won't reject evidence that disproves the Bible by any stretch of the imagination, but nobody's ever found any evidence. If they actually look at and read the Bible, I've heard your kind, tell me that this is a very unscientific book. And that proves to me you don't know what it says, because it's loaded with scientific information on medicine, on archaeology, on agriculture, and botany, on the universe, on astronomy, on the hydrologic cycle. I mean, it obviously doesn't put it in scientific language, no. But it's in here. The principles are in here, and every time the Bible mentions anything about science, it has never been shown to be wrong. And as far as the archaeological things, where archaeologists and where people that are into that circle say, well, that's not true about the Bible, when the evidence is finally discovered, dug up, it has been shown that the Bible has been 100% accurate every time when the evidence was actually dug up. I mean, you know, it used to be an argument in archaeology that, you know, that, well, there's tons of different arguments in archaeology, but over the years that have been overturned. Like, for example, they've gone back to a place like Jericho, and when they've done digs on Jericho, you know, they looked at the walls of Jericho when they're digging the ruins, and they found something very strange. They found that the walls that surrounded the ancient city were not pushed in because battering rams push it in. There was no sign that it was removed by an earthquake per se. What they actually found is that the walls had literally dropped down, just like the Bible says that you know, when the Israelites went around you know, what was it, 7 times blowing on their trumpets, and and God says that He caused the walls to just drop straight down. And they've found evidence for this, even though it's bizarre, and you know, they find it very strange, but it's there as one example. Also, there used to be an argument that ancient man, you know, we couldn't have biblical records because ancient man didn't have writing back then, and you know, and yet we went to a place called Tel El Amarna, where we have found literally hundreds of thousands of tablets showing that not only was writing back then, but that it was a common form of communication and commerce of the day and whatnot. So, I mean, every time somebody said something that isn't true about the Bible, when the evidence is finally dug up, the Bible has been shown to be 100% accurate. Now, as far as the creation thing, now keep in mind, the creationists, that is an interpretation. That is an interpretation not necessarily bore out in the Bible. God does not tell us how old the earth is, nor how long He allowed it to sit there before He did anything with it. But as far as when he actually did create the earth, that was an instantaneous act. And there is evidence to base that on. Study the geological records, study the insides of rock, study polonium-218, and the rings that are in granite, which is a rock that we can't make. We can make diamonds, we can make other things, but we cannot make granite. It's one of the only things we cannot make ourselves synthetically, and it has polonium-218 in it. Now, the problem with polonium-218, and it's got the halos. The problem with the halos being in this is the fact that polonium-218 has a half-life of about 3 minutes. There's a guy named Gentry who did a study on this, and you should go and look at that. And he talks about these polonium halos and about the half-life and how it breaks down and whatnot. It's a very fascinating study. And basically, the conclusion is that the Earth, taking billions of years to be created over, basically it's billions of years old, but the conclusion is that the Earth was formed in less than an hour, based upon these halos in these granite rocks. And then he also, we also know that polonium-218 can be produced by uranium. But when you find these halos encapsulated in the rock without whatever created it, then you got a bit of a mystery. So anyway, I would recommend that you study it. It's called I think it's called Nature's Tiny Mystery or something like that. But it's by a man named Gentry. He is a scientist, by the way, too. And there's a lot more than just 2 or 3 scientists out there, and many of them are graduates from top universities like Harvard, like Stanford, like Colgate, different places. So, I mean, do your research. I mean, you say, anytime you produce a fact, I've posted things in support of the Bible scientifically, and whatnot, and I get a lot of arguments, but I never get them ever posting any legitimate facts. So if you have real facts to bring to my attention, bring it to my attention. Bring it to my attention, please. I would be interested in seeing it. But keep in mind that it needs to be a legitimately proven fact, not somebody's half-baked theory. Okay? Otherwise, I think probably the best thing that both the evolutionists can do, and the creationists as well, is that they should put their own theories to the test. What I mean by that is, rather than looking for the evidence that validates what we're saying, or you looking for the evidence that validates what you're saying, what we ought to do is be looking for the exact opposite. We should have, this is our theory, now we're going to look for evidences that prove our theory wrong, so that if it can't be proven wrong, then obviously the more and more we find evidence that isn't proving it wrong, when we can't find the evidence to prove it wrong, then the more and more likely it is going to be accurate. Because human beings on both sides, Christian and non-Christian alike, unfortunately do have a tendency to look for things that seem to support their position, whether it's legitimate or not. So maybe it's best, if we're going to do this truly scientifically, to test our own theories to see if we can find things that, legitimate things, that actually do the exact opposite, prove our theory wrong. And if our theory can't be proven wrong, regardless of our diligent efforts to do so, then that only increases the likelihood that it is correct. And that's actually really how science is supposed to be conducted. You come up with a theory, you set out to prove your own theory wrong. If you can't do it, there's a very good likelihood your theory is a fact.